I've never felt Norway in any way to be heavily religious as you see in the US. I was never raised in a Christian or any kind of religion growing up. Going to church with the school for Christmas and before Easter is usually the closest I've gotten to being in churches. And this is a church we usually went to when we did go with our class. So in this video, I wanted to get an insight into how somebody makes their whole life about a religion and kind of how that has an impact on them.
My mother was raised in a Christian environment, Christian home. My father was not. They married and my father said, whatever you want to do, it's fine with me. And so I would say my early life, while my parents were still married, our faith practices centered around a few things that were from her childhood. Maybe a practice of Advent at Christmas, or we went to Easter. When my parents divorced and we moved back to Minnesota, my mom, who was a single mom, found a lot of support in a local church. And so then I was raised around a local church. Just, we did like Sunday school and summer camp and, but it feels like as a child, it was way more like just welcome the little children. And so we did a lot of play. And I remember some really profound moments as a kid, things that seemed real holy. I never doubted like that Jesus was a real person. We had a little nativity set. Jesus hung out by the camel, by the three wise men. Like I believed in Jesus as a historical figure, that Jesus was a good person. I never doubted that. I don't think my whole life. But it wasn't until much later that I developed any personal convictions about how that impacted me. I had a friend who I actually went to North Park with, and when I went to North Park as an undergrad, I was not somebody that was a professing Christian. Again, I didn't disagree that Jesus was real or that he was a good person, but I was busy breaking rules. And a friend of mine who was breaking rules with me too, when we were in our mid-20s, she said, you should come to this Bible study that I'm going to. And I said, no, I don't think so. And she invited me about 30 times. And finally I went and I met the quirkiest group of people that I never thought I would be friends with as my cool self. And yet these people loved me so well. I pushed, I asked questions, I doubted and challenged what they believed, and they just stayed with me. About a year into that Bible study, this friend said, you should come to church. I was a bartender at the time, and I said, I really am liking this Bible study, but I really don't think I'm gonna do church. And but one morning after a late shift, got home and I thought, I'm gonna go to church. I don't know really what the impulse was, but I felt like I'm doing it. I'm going today. And I showered twice. You could still smoke in bars at that time, so you have an aroma. And I got dressed and I went to church, and I know now, I knew then even, I felt some conviction about what I was wearing, like these are not church clothes. And I sat in the back row because it made me feel braver, and I closed my eyes and I had a vision. This is all I can testify to. It had not ever happened before in my life, but as I closed my eyes, I felt like I could see Jesus walking towards me, and Jesus stood next to me, and he said, would you dance with me? And I was like, oh yeah, we do not dance the same. And Jesus, I felt like in this vision, said again, would you dance with me? And I said more honestly the second time, I don't know how to dance like you dance. And I began to hear in my head, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And I know I don't know how to ballroom dance. And so I said again, I don't know how. And Jesus said, well, you could stand on my shoes like a dad would do with a daughter. And I think it was so tender to me because my dad had not been part of my life for a long time. And so in this vision, and I know it's just a vision, it's not true. In my mind, I began to this dance with Jesus, and Jesus said, now look at me. And I panicked because I know that, leave while the party's good. Leave before you get found out. I mean, you learn this pretty early, right? And Jesus said, look at me. And I panicked, and I could tell in my spirit I was wrestling. And then I felt like Jesus took my chin in his hands and lifted my face to his, and I could see myself for who I was. And I was messy, and in my opinion, not that beautiful. And yet Jesus said, but you are beautiful to me. And the dance continued. And I left that church service utterly converted. I thought, if this is all it is that I just need to stay in step with Jesus, and he knows me fully. and he's not freaked out. I'm going to do this the rest of my life. I mean, and everybody around me would testify to the fact that it happened, that I was living one kind of life and I had this experience and I began living a very different kind of life easily. Like, it wasn't like I was trying to be like, oh, I can't drink. Oh my gosh, I really want to sleep with my boyfriend. I want to tell all these lies. Like, all of a sudden it was like easy to be like, you know what? I just want to live in a way that honors God and loves people super well. And whatever was mean started being nice, and whatever was false started being true, and whatever was sad started finding joy. And so in the Christian tradition, a lot of people feel compelled to defend the gospel. I gotta fight for it. I'm a pacifist, peacekeeper. I really don't, I'm not gonna fight for the faith. I would die for it, but I'm not gonna fight for it. I think if Jesus is true and right and good, Jesus can defend Jesus' self. I think people should ask, does the way I'm practicing my faith, does it heal the world? Is it good news to other people? And if not, why am I practicing it? I was just actually telling someone today, I have been ordained since 2005. And so that's the practice in the church where a denomination officially says, yes, we think you're legitimate. We trust you with the role of pastor to represent us. And but I've been doing ministry since 2001 is the first time I served a church. It's been a real privilege to serve in the local church and to serve kind of a multi-generation. And it has been a real joy to focus on an age group and to say, what does it look like to walk with young adults as they ask questions about themselves and about God and about what their purpose is in life. And to be welcomed into that story has been a real privilege. Well, I was super naughty when I was an undergraduate, and so it is very interesting to preach a Jesus who knows our past and believes we have a different future when you actually are having the lived experience of you're living in full view of all the places you were the most naughty, proclaiming a God who has space for everybody. While I was an undergrad, I went to chapel just once, my entire 4 years. And I went there on a field trip with some friends. We said, hey, let's just go check it out. And we went once. And it is, to be honest, I felt unwelcomed. I now think it had nothing to do with the people in the room. It had to do with the fact that I wanted to participate but not change anything in my life. I think that there's some conviction that happens, and it's easier to blame other people than to own the fact that you don't really want to change. When I first came back to North Park, there were still some professors who had been here when I was an undergraduate, and one of them took me out to lunch and said, I don't want to be offensive, but you are maybe the last person I thought would be our campus pastor. I said, I know, that's because Jesus changes lives for real. I said, so it has been fun. And so when I went to seminary, I didn't have any thought that I was going to be a pastor. That wasn't really on the radar. I just wanted to know as much as I could about Jesus. In my third year of seminary, I got it in my head that I needed to figure out how to walk with God. And so I set out to walk across the United States from the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean to figure out what it was to not just walk with people who knew God, but to learn how to walk with God myself and to walk with the people He put in front of me. And I just fell in love with people. The best part of being a pastor is that people give me very privileged access to their real lives. And in that place, like, God shows up. And so I think, who gets to see God show up every day? And yet I feel like I'm getting glimpses of God every day. It may be a funny illustration, but a friend of mine a long time ago said, how do roses grow? I said, oh, by sun and rain and pruning. And they said, no, Judy, crap makes roses grow. And I thought that was so funny, but I think some of the most beautiful things do come out of that. And when you see somebody having experienced something that's been so painful, and then they turn around and help somebody else that has been through this similar pain. Like those sort of things, it's like glimpses of something so beautiful. It's like, yeah, I think most people don't get the privilege of seeing that. And I get to see it almost every day. My very final comment, I think I would say this to you because this would be your journey, but because I think you represent a ton of people who are on a similar journey. I don't think the Christian faith is something you wrap your mind around. I think it's something you wrap your life around, and then the things that didn't make sense all of a sudden seem to matter less.